Our state has some incredible problems. My name is Lynn, Hinderaker. I'm here to talk about that with you and talk about the trends that have shaped this state and dragged us in one direction or another. We're not really we're not realizing the dream we had way back in the early 2000s or even around 2008 or 9 or 10. My name is Lynn Hinderaker. Welcome to WowBiz Nebraska. We're going to get it on right now. Two things matter right now in the state of Nebraska. We're going to cover them both right here in WowBiz Nebraska. I'm Lynn Hinderaker. I've got Bruce Arant with me, so he's going to make sure I don't miss a thing. We're talking about today, leadership, new era leadership, unique approaches, fresh, enlightened approaches towards leadership, and innovation. Now, you know, the Nebraska Chamber of Commerce has said that innovation, this is it now, they're clear, innovation is the reason we're not moving forward as a state. So we need to refocus on that. We're already ahead of everybody. Bruce, it's going to be great to talk to you about these two issues because you know we're hot. We're in the groove with this particular topic. So let's talk a little bit about leadership. We both have been around enough. We've had different leaders. We've led groups ourselves and so on. Right. What's some of the new thinking, the fresh thinking about leadership that would attract particularly young workers, but everybody in general and get them kind of out of the malaise that we're suffering from here in Nebraska?
Well, I came across a book review recently that, and I've got my notes here because I'm not going to pretend that I memorized everything about this. I didn't read the book, but I read the review, and it sounds very interesting. It's called Act Like a Leader, Think Like a Leader. And this author comes up with, instead of insights, she comes up with what she calls outsides for leadership.
Clever.
And her the whole premise of everything in here is just to turn it all upside down and think differently. She's saying that introspection should follow action and experimentation. I mean, she thinks you should just go ahead and jump in and then sort of figure out what you're doing and why you should do it. And now that's completely backwards.
It reminds me, I just have to interject here, this reminds me of Tom Peters and his mentality and his approach towards running a business and so on. He had a book called Reimagine about 20 years ago, and it had some similar things. Keep going, I'm fascinated.
It feels very reckless on one end, but it made sense the more I read about this. She says you need to, and the author, by the way, is Herminia, I think, Ibarra.
Okay.
But you need to redefine your job and your networks when you go networking and all of that, and then actually yourself. So in terms of redefining your job, you need to become, and this is great, in terms of a leader, she says as a leader you need to become the bridge from your team, from your company, to the outside world. Yeah. And it's that way you can understand, you can see,
both sides.
See both sides, and it made me think of that TV show Undercover Boss. Remember that?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what was happening there. Yeah. Where the top of a company would go out and pretend to be maybe applying for a job with his company or something, and he was able to, or he or she were able to
really see the business from a different vantage point.
And that's what she was saying you need to do. Then networking, to redefine your network, she said, and I love this, she says, we are narcissistic and lazy in our networks. Which is so true when you think about it. She said, when you go to a networking thing...
Let me get this straight, narcissistic and lazy.
And lazy. Because when you go to a networking event or whatever, it's usually with people who are just like you. I mean, are very, very similar. You really don't expand yourself. You really aren't learning anything new from anybody. Yeah. You might get some leads on something. But she's got a step-by-step thing in the book about how to develop generational, personal, and strategic networks, and she talks about all those three different types of networks.
Go back now. You say the three of them are what? Say first, generational. Did you say?
Generational, personal, and strategic. Wow. And she said it'll get you outside of your otherwise predictable, communities that you're going to, your group.
So an older group or guy or gal should be maybe forcing themselves to be around young folks. Would be an example.
Yeah.
Okay. So
and
then we go on to
maybe even different types of businesses than what you're used to being around.
Yeah. But, and then the second category was personal networking.
Personal, yeah.
Now what would that be? That would be like church or PTA or maybe seeing people that you would never come across before?
Some people outside of your business aspect.
For a while there, I had a great time. I pushed myself into a creative writing group.
Oh, okay.
And they met on Saturdays so I could fit that into my life. And I must tell you that the people that were in the group were very different from me,
right,
and the people that I normally hang out with. So I mean, I can really relate to that. And there were some older folks and some younger kids and so on, and they had a unique reaction to the stuff that I was writing as well. So I mean, I can really appreciate that.
But it really expands your whole world. Though,
it does, you know, and it makes you think when you leave. I thought to myself, you know, this is not my kind of people. They're not my kind of group.
Right.
And yet, creativity is what was holding us together.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, I thought that was a very interesting situation. I thought about maybe going back or maybe reforming another group, kind of being inspired by that, but doing something maybe even different, melding art with public speaking and writing.
See?
I mean, I don't know if that would work or not, but and then the third
other
one
one
is
was strategic networks. Yeah.
Now, what would that be?
Now, see, I haven't read the book,
no,
so I don't know.
No, but we can talk about. I mean, you can assume.
I'm guessing that it's more of that would be maybe more business strategies, maybe
around VIPs, you know, be around people that would kind of embrace you or say if there's anything I can do for you, help you out or whatever. Yeah. You know, and maybe you've got a project or you're working on something, and so I know that guy and he knows somebody over here who can help me out. But
I think it still goes back to meeting with people who aren't in the same exact pond that you're swimming in, you know? I mean, and seeing how you can work together. I mean, you've spoken about that a lot in terms of how to work with other
and of course it fits into the diversity thing that is really kind of redefining our culture now. And by the way, I got to tell you, at the back end of the show, we're going to be talking about innovation, and of course, diversity or variety or exposing yourself, kind of pushing yourself to get involved with or expose yourself to stimuli that's quite different. That is a catalyst for innovation. So we'll talk about that more, but it just seems like these two topics are kind of related.
Right. The other thing that she said, and I thought this was very interesting, I loved a quote she had here. One of the things you need to redefine is yourself. And she said that you need, she says this is, or the reviewer said this is perhaps the most scary part of the whole thing is really facing who you are. I mean, who are you really? And the quote I loved here is, not being yourself could actually be holding you back. So people, you know, we try to put up our whatever facade, personas, you know, of being this or being that. She said, if you can let your guard down and actually be yourself, you might find out that you can lead better by being yourself. Yeah,
you know, there was a lady that told me, she complimented me, this is years ago, she said, you know, you're a very transparent person, so I'm attracted to the things that you're saying and so on. I kind of enjoy being around you because I always know that you're not trying to posture or spin something.
See what you get.
And it's just, it's much more charming if you just kind of come out and you're not calculating. But there are people that would disagree with that.
There would be, and it kind of comes down to personality types. If if a person has a bad personality, maybe you don't want them to be themselves. You know what I mean?
That could be true.
But I think a lot of times we really don't feel the freedom to create and to think innovatively if we're being constrained by how we think we should be thinking. If we can just be a little more free, that's what the point was, I think.
You know, it's so funny. We always seems like we have a choice to make. One is we can talk about how we are right now, and we have to decide whether we're going to spin it positively or be kind of really authentic and open. Or we can talk about what we want to be and the direction we are trying to go. You know, you almost make that decision quickly depending on who you're around.
Right.
You know, I'll never forget one of the first times, and you were in the room. You were in the room. This is back in June of 2017, I believe, and I did that one-man performance.
Oh yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah.
Now that was a thing where I actually came out and told everybody, there were only 20 people there, right? But I said, I don't care whether or not you like this. I'm not going to try to sell you anything. That's very unusual for me because I'm always selling something to somebody. But I said, I don't care about any of that now. And I said, this is for my grandchildren. Remember that?
I remember that. Yep.
Yeah. And I did share a lot of very personal things, as you recall. And a couple times I became a little bit emotional, you know. And I think I mean, that was an example. I think the audience respected that.
Yeah.
And they realized that this was one of those moments where you grab a little bit of somebody else's private life and weave it into yours or whatever.
It was very genuine and heartfelt.
Very genuine.
In a very intimate setting. I mean, there like you say, there was a group there, but it wasn't you know,
Yeah,
it wasn't a stadium or anything.
It really was. It
yeah.
really was. And I remember afterwards, the number one thing that made me so happy was that nobody wanted to leave.
Yeah.
People wanted to stay and talk about the things that I had touched on.
There were a lot of people staying afterwards.
Yeah, and I was so flattered by that. But anyway, the key point in our discussion here was that I did, in fact, reveal, you know, kind of who I was and what I had gone through in my life, all with the idea of these little children someday looking and saying, you know, that's my granddad or great-granddad or whatever. And he taught me something that might help me avoid some problem or some negative chapter in my life.
Right, right.
And I think that's a
good legacy.
It's a good legacy. It's the only legacy that I can kind of really think of. But anyway, that's the name of the game here. So leadership is on a new thing. You know, if you had not been here today or been talking about this, and somebody would have said, "What's the new trend in leadership?" You know, I would have said not these things, but I would have said empathy was a increasingly important thing. Yeah. That never used to be, you know, what it was about. In fact, I'll mention to you briefly as we wrap this for a second. Have you heard that Disney threw out their CEO? And he'd been around 2 or 3 years. Okay. The gentleman that had always been the CEO for Disney, which was Bob Iger, who's 71 now. But this guy was kind of a hard and fast guy, very, you know, get out of my way, we're going to get it done the way it needs to be done. Very systematic, rigid, scientific thinker, rational thinker. Okay. Of course, Disney is a creative culture. Right. So he didn't fit in. Business went down. They lost $1 billion in the second quarter of the year.
That's more than I make in a whole year.
Anyway, so they finally had to almost quickly throw him out and get on the phone and beg Bob Iger, who had been there 25 years, you know, but had retired, you know.
They brought him back?
Beg him to come back.
No kidding.
Because there was just nobody there
I had not heard
that had the feel and the spirit of Disney and could get along with all the creative types. Yeah. But the key idea there was they pushed power out to the edges of the organization. It wasn't the guy sitting around saying, I'll make that decision. And, you know, there was less hierarchy.
One of the points made but I'll make this quick, is that it has, and it's always the case, it has to start at the top. Any change in the organization, and she was saying, if as a leader, if you can't really be emulating this and embodying these things, it's not going to work.
You know, I've had the privilege of doing some executive training and leadership development in another market here in the state of Nebraska with an economic development person who I think has great potential. But it's so interesting to see how he absorbs these kinds of suggestions because he's so deep in managing 37 projects. Right, right. And when I keep challenging him, think of yourself in broader, more CEO type category, or mayor. Think of yourself as the mayor. Right, right. And it's a challenge for him because he's just covered, just surrounded by all these issues, sewer pipes, and all kinds of different, mechanical.
The minutia
of running a city, you know. And it was really hard for him to absorb even this kind of great advice and think of himself as entering the room and managing other groups. You know, everybody take care of this, take care of that, and just kind of moving. And number two is portraying a vision. Yeah. People want a vision coming from the mayor, the boss. Tell us who we are and where we're going.
Yeah. And they want that person, that leader, to embrace that and live it, and to show that they believe
embody
it. Embody it.
Yes. Yeah. It's and they'll get out of bed and follow a person who can do that and persuade them that they're on the right track and we're going to go for this all together. Yeah. And that's a heck of a thing. Well, Bruce Arant, thank you so much for breaking it down and getting us up on the cutting edge of leadership here in the state of Nebraska. We need lots of new leaders, and this kind of advice is invaluable for them. All right, we're going to talk to you for a second about the show. This particular show, WowBiz Nebraska, is brought to you by the Daily Record here in Omaha, Nebraska. And the Daily Record should ring a bell with you because the Daily Record has been around this city and this state for over 100 years. I got to say that again. 100 years is how long the Daily Record has been printing primarily legal listings. I'm sure you're starting to put two and two together here, and remember that there are every single day there are dozens and dozens of legal judgments that are have to be printed and distributed, and everybody has to know. Now, the publishers have gone away, of course. We have a new generation of publisher, Jason Huff and his wife Arant, and a small, tight, hardworking team. They've got freelancers and so on, all working together to kick out, can you imagine now, every single day, okay? You know how busy that is?
That's a lot.
Oh my goodness. But here's the thing I want to share with our audience here today, real briefly. You got to, first of all, you should be subscribing to the Daily Record, because I come to find out, and I'm going to try to reach in here and show you, just to remind you, they've come a long ways graphically. They're really updating their stuff that used to be just very, very mundane. Now we've got some great pictures. We've got color on the front cover. And we have some controversial topics. They're covering some topics journalistically that are controversial, and good interviews and stuff like that.
So it's good reading.
Good. It's a good read. Yeah. Above and beyond, of course, this stuff. Right. Now, I don't mean to say that despairingly.
No.
I've finally taken the time, as should everybody in the city of Omaha, Nebraska and beyond, and take some time and actually take a look at what is going on in our city. Because, ladies and gentlemen, every single one of these paragraphs, these tight little paragraphs of text, is an indication of change. Yeah. Change is happening right beneath our noses. So when one person dies and an estate is distributed, all of a sudden things need to happen, right? If there's a divorce, well, there could be therapy, there could be a house that's being sold. You need movers. There's all kinds of interesting things that come about as these deep changes that happen in our lives. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, new businesses start every day in Omaha, Nebraska. Every day. And there's an attorney, of course, that does all the paperwork. But then you find out exactly where the business is. You find out who owns the business, right? And you can put two and two together and find out, well, these guys are going to need this or that based upon what they're producing or selling or whatever.
That really is a gold mine.
It's a gold mine, ladies and gentlemen. I got to tell you, if you're in sales, you sell anything. I don't care if it's lawn care, if it's a roof, interior design, furniture. I don't care what it is, services, financial services. This is a gold mine. I say that with great seriousness. Now, when people find that out, and not everybody has, but people are figuring out, this is a better resource than we realized, right? You just shut the door of your office and sit down for half an hour and it's there. So, but here's the key, right? They need some advertising, right? And it's a wonderful opportunity for you to dominate, very important, the media. Right? I'm sure people have told you before as you come up in marketing and so on, don't try to be everything to everybody. Find some kind of a sandbox or a wheelhouse where you can be the primary player, even if it's kind of small. Right. Now, how many views, and I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but I'm going to anyway, how many views would you guess this paper and the commensurate website, very, very nice website that they have, this is the OmahaDailyRecord.com, how many views would you think that they would be getting minimum every week? Huh? Any idea?
I'm just going to throw out a number, 5,000? What?
4,500 to 5,000.
Really? Okay.
You are awesome, Bruce. Smarter than I thought. No, that is great. So that's a great example. And that's not bad.
No, that's
not. I mean, there are a lot of websites that don't get that kind of visitation. Yeah. So that is really cool. If you want to attract, and by the way, who would you guess the primary readers are of the Daily Record? Huh? Are they upmarket? Are they downscale? They're going to be up market.
Are they up?
They're going to be attorneys.
Well, I was going to say it's primarily attorneys, I think, right?
All right. Yeah, attorneys and real estate people, commercial bankers. So this is an up market if you want to advertise and get in front of those kinds of people here in this city, and you do, you definitely want to get involved with the Daily Record. All right. Thanks so much. Check out the Daily Record, Omaha Daily Record. You get a chance to do that every single day. Now, Bruce.
Yes.
Thanks again for joining me here today on WowBiz Nebraska. People are so glad you're here. They say he's such a nice guy. He takes such crap from you, Lynn. I don't know what he's thinking.
You should see the mail I get.
Right. Okay, well, anyway, so here we go. Recently, and the last 2 or 3 years, it's been a real challenge for Nebraska to try to figure out why youth are leaving, why population growth is not so great. Right. And, we talk a lot about taxes and whether or not tax reform will actually help the state turn the corner. And it's, of course, it's always good, but I'm going to tell you that's not it. I was at a conference last week, as a matter of fact, in Lincoln. Nebraska Chamber of Commerce put this on. It was focused on workforce.
Okay.
Now, this is the second time now I've been to a conference like this. I happened to speak to a young man who is now the new leader of the Nebraska Community Independent Bankers Association. All right, pretty powerful position.
Yeah.
And chatted with him about his feelings about this whole event and young people and all that. Because he was a young guy, maybe 35. And he said, I'll tell you one thing. He said, I don't have a lot of time to talk, but I'll tell you this. We don't care about taxes. We don't care about tax reform. We're not interested in that. Huh. He said, what we're looking for is what, Lynn, you've already told me, which is we want to be with companies that know how to innovate, that know how to innovate. Now, I've talked to young folks, and they tell me, you know, we're leaving Nebraska because when you go out and talk to business owners and employers, they're not very interested in chatting about innovation, right?
They're just status quo. Probably.
Status quo, status quo, tradition. My dad ran this, I'm going to keep on going, even though our profit margins are minuscule, we'll just keep on going. I don't have the time to worry about rolling out a new product, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Now, you know well, of course, that Nebraska is positioning yourself as leaders in innovation across the entire state. That's what we do fundamentally after this, of course. Right. So we provide instruction and we spearhead, we champion innovation. It's time for innovation. So we're going to talk just a little bit about an example of what innovation is. You said leadership is evolving. Right. I'm going to show you why innovation is evolving, and kind of a different way to think about innovation.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Now, the idea is think of a living system, like a garden.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
With bunnies and butterflies and birds and bees and bugs, whatever, and all kinds of plants that are all interacting in some way. Right. They're interdependent, to be sure, in a healthy ecosystem or biosphere and so on. Right. And so the key is this, and I'll be more specific. Let's pretend that a business is being challenged by a competitor, and the competitors are suddenly moving in and grabbing our customers. Okay. Now, that's a challenging situation, and think about, how do I say this? It's like a canoe that's going down a stream and moving to the edge of the waterfall. All right. And so, you want to be at the edge of the waterfall because that's when you actually do things. You respond to situations like the competitive situation I just mentioned.
You just don't want to go over.
No, that's right. But if you can get to the edge, that's when the new ideas come. That's when the fresh thinking comes.
The water's moving the most rapidly.
In other words, put yourself in a chaotic shit. It is okay to have chaos under those circumstances. Now, business owners will say, "Oh, no, I don't want chaos. I want systemized regularity, predictability." But that's what got you in the situation in the first place. That you weren't aware that the competitors were coming and they had all these different things they could do, and you can't do them. And what are we going to do, right? So you need to as a leader now, you need to be always pushing people towards the edge. And when you push them towards the edge, what happens is you get mutation. Mutation, which is you basically change the DNA of the company. That's the key idea.
With innovation?
Yeah, with mutation, with pulling. You need to come over here. We need to get a different guy in here sitting at the management table. What fresh ideas do you have? Okay. That's a good idea. Let's weave them into this.
I see. Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
So and you become somebody different once you start weaving in new ideas or technology.
Right.
Now, here's a metaphor. Okay. And pardon the everyday mundane nature of this. But let me show you how this works.
Okay. I'm very curious.
So this is, I want you to pretend that you are the CEO for Procter & Gamble, which manufactures Palmolive. Okay? And it's a good household, well-known name and all that. So, but for the last 2 or 3 years, the marketing manager comes over and says, our profits are not up. In fact, we're having to discount even a little bit more just to sell more Palmolive dish soap. Okay. I don't know what to do, boss. Right? Other than discount it even more. Right. Then there's another company that manufactures these little things right here, for scrubbing the dishes. And this is kind of a commodity, and business has been going down for years on this. They only make 3.5 cents on every one of these things, right? And so it's a little challenging. Now, this is an ecosphere. The kitchen and the sink area are an ecosphere.
That's the
They're part of a living
that's
system,
the garden
if you
right
will.
there. Yep.
That's the garden, exactly right. Then, so then there are other companies, and they participate in the clean the dishes ecosystem.
Okay.
Right? And so we've got a brush manufacturer. All right, we like that. And then one of these big boys right over here.
Right.
So these are all 4 companies doing their own thing, trying to sell these to the housewife and so on. Right? So things are all tight. It's a very mature market. We're giving these products away. We can't sell anymore. We've tried on the web, da-da-da-da-da. We've tied in with a social cause. It didn't seem to help too much. So what are we going to do? Well, somebody like a brand manager could say, you know, we got a new guy down in that department, the product development department, and he came up with a heck of an idea. He said, what if there's some way that we could get this soap into this company's sponge and somehow bring them all together into some kind of a simple and easy to use thing.
Like a whole new product?
A whole new product, right. And it would be so powerful that it would drive these guys right out of business, or if they're scared enough, we might ask them to invest in this so that they can at least make some money as investors on the side. Yeah. So they go off and the boss says, that sounds very interesting. Go ahead and figure something out. So now we have a fusion product, and these 2 companies have formed a collaboration. They are mutating right now, see? They're bringing these 2 things together. One guy said, this is great, man. And now you can clean dishes. You've got all the liquid right here from here. You can fill it up if you want to refill it. And you can exercise a little more friction, and you don't have to get your hand down in the goop, all that. There it is.
That's brilliant.
Now it goes, it's brilliant. And then it goes after a year or 2 and it starts capturing sales and people saying, well, it's $7, but it seems like it might work, right? So they're making margins. They're working 30, 40, 50% margin. These guys are working on 3 to 7% margin. These guys over here are working on 2 to 3 margin. They're doing millions, but they, and so they come sneaking over at a trade show and say, we're still going to continue with our core products, but we'd like to invest $500,000 in this thing right here. And you can come up with variations, line extensions, and so on. And we're still going to compete with you, but we know this is going to be the $10 or $12 item that's going to win this, redefine this market. Right. So this is the ecosystem, this is the garden, and this is the example of mutation and fusion that leads to new product development. And every single person who's watching this show works with a company that needs to think about how to pull things together or unbundle them and pull them apart. All right, does that make sense?
Because there's probably always an opportunity to do either put them together or
but the thing is, we live in a parity market or a parity industry where everything can be commoditized, and I can do that for 3 cents less. And so there's tremendous price pressure on the internet. There's some guy in Poland that is manufacturing these for half the cost. And so you're constantly dealing with that. And that's why pulling together new partnerships, new collaborations, and new fusionary ways of getting the core job done, and then sometimes targeting, this could be positioned with a child, a lot of cool graphics, and convince a 7-year-old girl that now that she's got this, she can be with mommy, right? She can have her own product and be just like mommy, but it looks like a kid's product. And on and on and on. Right?
Super innovative, though. It really is.
And it can be done in every industry. Whoever's watching going, oh, that's pretty cool, but we could never do that. We're manufacturers, we're distributors. You all can do this kind of thing. But you have to pull your head up, look around, and realize what's really happening out there. What is the consumer being responding to? So anyway, that's what we've got here in WowBiz Nebraska. We've got Bruce Arant and new leadership concepts. We've got new innovation concepts. Nebraska is going to become innovative again finally and become more competitive, attract people, jobs, taxes, everything is going to be better. And everyone's going to watch WowBiz Nebraska.
Aren't they already?
Huh?
Aren't they already?
Aren't they already? We have a huge audience. We'll see you again. Thanks so very much.